It's happening. So I think there were. Hello. My name is Jason Luttrell from Bartings Live and from Bartings.com, and Chris Schneider, we're going to cover the who, what, and how of successful and profitable bar operations. And today we're going to be talking about reputation management and how to, and guest recovery, server recovery, and how to deal with fussies. Join me today is Chris Schneider. Chris, tell us about yourself.
I am also a bar consultant. I work mostly on the financial end of things. I also host the Bar Business Podcast and have written a book, How to Make Top Shelf Profits in the Bar Business. So check those out.
Okay. All right. So you were explaining to me all this stuff that you did with like P&L, profitability, and then you showed me something that really blew my mind. You sent me this whole Google Drive folder of how you did an analysis of a whole bar and their finances. Seriously, what is up with that? I couldn't understand most of it, but then you broke it down to the end, and you're like, "These are the 10 things that you need to do. This is how you do it, and this is what you result of doing that." Can you explain that to me again, like I'm 2 years old, before we get into guest recovery?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, what I do, and this is kind of a new program I've been working on that. Take existing bar financials or restaurant financials for that matter, but mostly bars is where I focus. So bar financials, month by month, look at the P&L, the balance sheet, look at some other documents like payroll records, POS records, things like that, and develop out essentially a very detailed analysis where I'm measuring. It depends on the information that we have available, but somewhere between 50 and 75 KPIs, and then analyzing that, looking at month-to-month trends, and then benchmarking it against the industry and coming up with recommendations that help people move their bar forward financially. So not as some of it can be, hey, we need to market more. Some of it can be sales need to go up. Some of it can be, hey, we need to lower these costs. But it all comes back to the P&L and really a financial baseline to judge what's going on and what can change in order to put more profits in the pockets of owners.
What's the number one problem that you see? What do you see the most of?
So it varies a lot place to place. I mean, obviously prime costs are hard to control for everybody. But one thing that I have seen quite a bit of, and it's interesting because it's not where we all focus, is sometimes there's savings to be had in expenses. Sometimes people are paying for things they don't know they're paying for. I'm sure everybody's seen like the subscription ads online of, hey, you need to download this program. I'll tell you how many subscriptions you have in your personal account. See that in businesses as well. And for example, I had one business I was doing a P&L review for, and when I was looking at it, they were paying $3.99 a month to OpenTable, but didn't know that they had OpenTable. So things like that, small, but $400 a month adds up pretty quick. It's $4,800 a year. And so it's looking for things like that in addition to sort of your standard prime costs and everything else to drive more profitability to the bottom line.
Insane. All right. So you started a bar at one point, right? You were in Indiana. Your family's been in the bar business. Yeah. So have you ever fussy guests?
I don't think it's possible to be in the business for more than 10 minutes and not have one. Yeah. I mean, I've had people complain about fish and chips because it was cod with a relatively standard batter and not spicy catfish. So, okay. I mean,
so were you specifically marketing to garbage people, or were these just is this just natural human behavior?
Natural human behavior for sure. And I think one thing that's true in the bar business, if you own, say, a fine dining restaurant, your clientele is people that go to fine dining restaurants. If you own a neighborhood bar anywhere in the world, your clientele is everyone that lives around you. Right? So we're in certain types of restaurants, it's possible that your guests are kind of you're getting a certain level of guests. They're kind of self-determining who goes there based upon what you offer. Whereas, a neighborhood bar, you get a little bit of everybody.
So at what point do you stop trying and just focus on like you got a fancy guest, you just can't make them happy. What do you do when you can't just when they choose not to be happy?
So I'm going to give you the wrong answer, but it's also when I owned a bar, it was what I did, which was it depended on how I felt. Right. I think all of us have other stresses and things going on. And sometimes how the outside things from that situation can impact how you treat the situation. But kind of that line for me was when we crossed the line of being reasonable. So if you want to have a conversation, great. Let's talk. Let's figure it out. Let's figure out a way to make you happy. If you wanted to be abusive and cuss at my bartenders, no, you can just leave. I don't care. So,
all right. You're based in Indiana. So what is abusive to you? I live in New York, and the definition of abuse is quite different here, I think.
Well, I don't think it's probably as different as you think it is. Yes, we have the Midwest nice stuff, but it's also the bar business, right? You're going to get people from all walks of life. I had a couple situations with one bar I was involved in where I had guests at the bar blatantly making homophobic and racist remarks loudly. So that was kind of crossed that line for sure, right? They had to go. But it's when, can I swear around here?
It's okay with me. I'm actually 43 years old. I've heard it before, probably.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if we had like explicit restrictions based on streaming or anything.
I don't think so.
It's when the guest goes from this situation is fucking bullshit to you are fucking bullshit.
Oh.
Right? So just saying the situation is fucking bullshit. Okay, maybe it is. Let's talk about it. But once I had a guest that would intentionally attack my staff and it got personal, that to me was the line.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So when did you have bars? When did you own bars?
So I owned bars between 2011 and 2017.
2017, and you were that would have made you a young person at that point because you still look pretty young.
I bought my first bar at 22.
What the fuck were you thinking? That sounds like insanity. Actually, no. It actually kind of makes sense because it is kind of a young person's game. So I guess that would totally make sense. What did you learn?
Everything. Like, let's be honest. I mean,
I mean, like 2011 through 2017, you said?
Yeah.
So that would be kind of in the early birth of reputation management for bars and restaurants online.
Yes.
And like it wasn't even a field. I'm not even sure if there were even Google reviews yet, but if in case you haven't heard of Google reviews, it is pretty much how people make decisions about how to buy things. So like the stakes just got like way higher. Like before it used to be like somebody would have a bad experience at a bar or restaurant and then they would tell their friends and then their friends wouldn't show up. And then their friends of friends wouldn't have heard about it because it's typically not so bad that you want to tell a friend of a friend. And then now it's like, not only do they tell their friends that they had a shitty experience, but they also put it online. And then things got crazier because TikTok came along and like people started recording their bad experiences and then putting them on TikTok and then making it like exponentially worse. Then it became like negative viral. And these are like extinction level events sometimes for bars and restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's also important to note that that even if it goes viral on TikTok, it may not necessarily turn into like, even if it's like on a local news story, it's probably not enough to kill your business anymore. That is, these extinction level events are typically reserved for over compliance, over competition, lack of cash flow, that kind of stuff. But I mean, being it like marketing minded, I'm always thinking about how just negative experiences can be turned around at the level, but at a certain point, it's just not going to happen. So what do you do? Like file a restraining order? Just trespass them?
So my go-to, and I actually really enjoyed doing this. I had a lot of fun doing this. And just because it amused me. So if something got to the point where I've now determined you to be abusive and you're going after my staff and you won't go out the door, right? If all three of those are true, I'd call the cops. And I would or have one of my team call the cops and just say, hey, somebody's here. They won't leave. We need you to come get them out. And then before the cops get there, I'd walk over to the person and go, look, man, you got two options. You can sit here and continue to be ridiculous, and the cops will get here in 5 or 10 minutes, however long it takes them, and they will legally trespass you from the premises. And, oh, by the way, you grabbed my waitress by the arm, so we're going to add that in there and to the story that we tell them. And they might, I'm not going to tell them to press charges for it, but, that's kind of borderline assault, and you're really not looking at a good situation for yourself. So if I were you in the next 5 minutes, I would just leave. Because if you're gone before they get here, I don't know your name. So why don't you just leave? And 9 times out of 10, they left. A few times they got arrested.
I saw this video on YouTube of this guy. There's this guy who kind of travels around the country regionally, and he said he goes in front of like city halls, restaurants, that kind of stuff, and he says, "God bless homeless vets." Right. And so he's standing out on his sidewalk in front of a restaurant. Like specifically, I saw this one and he was standing in front of a restaurant. He's saying, "God bless homeless vets." And the restaurant manager got really upset. He wasn't a customer. He wasn't on the property, but the bar manager got really upset because he was like, "This person is harassing my guests. This person is bothering my people. Would you please leave?" The guy wouldn't leave, and it turns out that he was this like constitutionalist guy, and he was, demonstrating his First Amendment right to free speech and protest and gather and all that stuff. And there was not a damn thing that the owner could do because he was standing on public property. And I'm actually, I actually like that this guy did this, but I don't like the way he did it. But I like that he did it because it's like, it's our constitutional protections are use it or lose it. So I just like wanted to make the point that that if they're not in your restaurant, there's nothing you can do about it. If they're making a fuss outside of your restaurant on public property, then it is 100% within their rights to do that because they have the same protections that you or I have under the First Amendment. So that's kind of interesting perspective. But
well, and something though to keep in mind. So like where you are, right? Everything's right on the street. The sidewalk is absolutely public property. If you're not in a large city and say you're in a strip mall with a parking lot, that parking lot's still private property. You may not rent that parking lot as the bar, but it's still private property. So you can kick them past the parking lot to the street. So it's not always that the sidewalk right in front of you is public. Sometimes it's the sidewalk on the other side of the parking lot that's public.
Well, how do you how do you train for these kind of encounters though? I mean, like I'm obsessed with recruiting, training, onboarding, retention, staff culture, stuff like that. I love this stuff right now. Like, I go in phases, but that's who I am this week. And like, I'm just super excited about this part of like training and how do you get people prepared for that? Like, what's your, like, how would you train somebody to deal with like, say you're training a manager or say you're training a guest, like what is your staff empowered to do to solve this problem?
So the hard part here is it all depends on local law, right? And so
no, forget the law. Like you're inside of a bar. Like let's say that this is a person who's being belligerent in your place, and the law is 20 minutes away. What do you do?
Well, you try to get them out, right?
I don't think there's anything you can do. I don't think there's anything you cannot threaten this person because you're the aggressor at that point.
And that's why I say it depends on the law. It depends on where you are, right? Because there are different standards of self-defense. There are different standards of where that line is, depending upon location and local law. But there are a lot of things you can do that are subtle. So like one of my favorites was always to stick your hands in your pockets and walk towards them slowly, very slowly. Like 2 or 3 inches every 10 seconds. Because what will inevitably happen, you're closing that gap between your personal space and their personal space. They will back up. So I have had people yell and scream at me as they walked out my door without knowing they were walking out my door.
See, my gut instinct would be to get as far away from that person as possible. Also, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I mean, I think there's a difference between assault and battery. And the big difference is that like assault means that somebody thinks that you're going to hit them. Like, so if you're like razor fist like this and like they think, but you don't actually hit them, that's assault. But if you actually hit them, that's battery. I was thinking that like maybe it might be a more interesting thing to try to get the rest of the restaurant on your side, the guests included. To be like, because like you have like people dining and dashing and like, you know, people are shitty, and so like they'll eat a whole meal and then be like, oops, I forgot my wallet. I think we talked about this last time. And like what are you gonna do but get everybody else to get mad with you? We do have a question from Angel. My last day of training for front of house staff members is to serve myself or the owner or both. We go full Karen on them and use it as a coaching opportunity. Thank you, Angel, for coming in with the gold. I
kind of like that.
I like that too. Maybe that kind of sense of humor is like being like, yo, Karen, what's up? Like, why are you doing this? Although I can think of nothing else that would enrage a Karen more than calling Karen a Karen.
Yeah. The other thing I've noticed, and I don't know, because I always had neighborhood bars. It was always a mix of people, and some of the people were definitely on the rougher side. And it's interesting, but I've always noticed that when you have somebody getting really aggressive and yelling, if you just are very unmoved and quiet, it tends to throw them off balance. They're getting allowed to provoke a reaction out of you. A lack of reaction makes it so they don't know what to do.
All right, I'm inviting Angel to be on the show because this is this stuff is hilarious. All right, let's see here. All right, so we are so just if you're still here, then this is a dress rehearsal of the Bar Teams Live. We are trying. We have our we're gathering up bar consultants, beverage consultants, hospitality consultants to offer their opinions on various topics. So Chris and I have done this a couple times. We think we've got it pretty well dialed in, and we would happily invite anybody who wants to come in and talk about their experience for the benefit of other hospitality operators. So I'm Jason from barteams.com. And if you've been here, we very much appreciate you coming by. As the weeks go by, we're going to get better and better and better at this. And so Chris, do you have anything you want to add before we call it a day?
No, but I do have a real quick question for you along this topic that we've been talking about.
Sure.
Have you ever gotten hit in a bar?
No, but I've definitely thought I was going to get hit in a bar. Okay. My story was I worked in a Chelsea nightclub.
Mm-hmm.
I worked in a Chelsea nightclub, and it's the life cycle of nightclubs in New York is that they kind of deteriorate. They're white hot celebrities, bungalows and limousines and stuff like that, and then it kind of moves down. So I was at the later ending stages of this nightclub, and it just got like really gnarly, and a guy pulled out a box cutter on the floor because he was friends with one of the security guards who also happened to be a drug dealer, and so he was supplying the drugs for the people in the bar. And then also let his friend come in with a weapon. Although, I mean, how do you really stop a box cutter? But anybody who's motivated can kill you with a pencil. But anyway, so this guy, he was like crazy, and he started threatening people. He was really drunk. It was like 4:00 in the morning, and I thought he was going to cut me, and I thought I was going to have a really bad night that night. Anyways, what were you going to say?
Oh no, I was just curious because it's. I feel like when you're dealing with people like this in a bar, these really bad patrons, most people assume they're going to get punched. And I will tell you, I've gotten 5 inches from people that could have really were in much better shape than me and really could have taken me bad. And not once did any of them actually make contact.
Yay. I love that for you.
But I think I think that's all to say, if you're smart and you think about the psychology behind it, there are ways to manipulate the situation in your favor that get people to not provoke a violent response.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything you want to say before we close it down for the day?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for checking out Bar Teams Live. I've been Jason Luttrell, and this has been Chris Schneider from the Bar Business Podcast. We will see you next Tuesday at 1:00 Eastern Time for about 30 minutes of chatting about a thing that is business critical for any bar, restaurant, or nightclub. All right. See you next time, y'all. Oops. Where's the stop button? Fuck's sake.